Welcome to episode 26 of the Loane Hockey Podcast, where today we're going to be talking about one of the NHL's most special wingers and one of the most dynamic wingers in today's game who's been consistently a 40 goal scorer with the Minnesota Wild. That is Kirill Kaprizov. Now, Kirill Kaprizov is a very intriguing player because I remember watching him in his first season in the NHL and prior to that when he was playing in the KHL for quite some time and how dynamic and how explosive he became within playing in the KHL. When you look at the makeup of his game, his shiftiness, how his game and his skating is built on his Mohawks, how his offensive zone patterning is slightly built off his Mohawks as well. So there's deception within his feet and his footwork that provides a lot of nuance and very similar to Ivan Demidov in this year's draft class with how you see a lot more flair within some of these players in the modern day era and flair in terms of their skating specifically and how they're able to utilize their feet, how they're able to maneuver and weight shift, but also the 10 and 2s and how the 10 and 2s have actually evolved to become more of a small area spacing threat. So players can take advantage of small area space and leverage 1v1 sequences. So Kirill Kaprizov is a prime example of a player who can do that. He can outmaneuver and out utilize deception on guys because not only of his small area spacing elements and how he's able to link together the on puck play with his feet. Those two elements in terms of being able to link together the feet and the on puck play is so important and so vital for Kaprizov to be able to do because obviously he has to have elusive feet, but to have elusive feet and be able to maneuver at the same time, be such a consistent scoring threat, you also have to have elite hands as well. So he brings the best of both worlds. And when you look at his skating and the emphasis on Mohawks, you have to have slightly more of an emphasis, at least in some degree, in terms of a deception element within his puck skills as well. And so for the puck skills element, what I've noticed with him is his puck positioning, specifically within his backhand, and how he's able to maneuver with range and how he's able to control pucks with range. He's very elite, actually, and very underrated when it comes to using strength to hold off defenders while using his backhand specifically. So these are specific points of emphasis when it comes to his game, where he's able to leverage it. And he's also very strong, and he has a very good foundation, very good center of gravity, really good lower body strength. So that, in addition, really helps in terms of his overall game and how he's able to control space, control pressure, continue to control certain circumstances to his own advantage as well. Now with Kirill Kaprizov, you're looking at a player that's obviously a consistent 40 goal scorer in the league, a consistent player prior playing in the KHL as a winger and how consistent he was scoring there and how he continued to get better over his years there. But the other factors you've noticed that Kaprizov has scored at every level. So in going back to when he was a mid-round pick, I forget which year, I believe it was either 2014 or 2015, one of the 2 years when Kaprizov was drafted, and he scored at every level. That's the thing that's really intriguing about him. He has scored, and he scored goals at every single level. So you want a player that brings that caliber and brings that consistency within his game. But the thing is, even in the NHL now, you know with Kaprizov, with his goal scoring makeup, with his shiftiness, with his deception, how he's able to maneuver using his puck skill, his elite shot threat, and how he can shoot off the catch. He can shoot inside high danger areas with such ease and also deception. And he's also really good at setting up plays, his shot assists and ability to score off shot assists and ability to make plays off those as well. So he's a very dynamic player in talking about his play within high danger ice as well. And part of that is due to his Mohawks. Part of that is due to his deception within his dual threat play because he is oftentimes a dual threat player in terms of how he can score and how he can make plays. He's very underrated as a playmaker because you see the goal scoring elements so consistently, and you see how he's able to score 40 goals so consistently. He can score in a variety of ways. He can score around the net in a competitive way where he can beat a net front defender and try to beat him in that sequence. He can score from range. He can score from moving laterally inside the slot area. He can score coming off the half wall and maneuvering off the wall and be able to be a threat there. So you're looking at a variety in terms of how he's able to score and also, like we've mentioned, how he's able to set up players as well. So with Kaprizov, what's really intriguing about his game too is the neutral zone play and the neutral zone buildup. Now, I remember when we talked about William Nylander and how specific he is at using linear crossover buildup within the neutral zone to gain speed and also use deceptive flair from time to time. With Kaprizov, you're looking at a player who doesn't necessarily rely as much on linear crossovers. He likes to actually use mohawks more often within his buildup inside the neutral zone. Something very interesting and something very intriguing. Like you see some of the modern day players and how they're able to incorporate some degree of mohawk pivots and Mohawks to gain speed and use deception. But with Kaprizov, you're noticing it in every single play and almost every single shift within his game. He's using those Mohawks with a purpose attached to them. That's a really intriguing makeup within his game is how he's able to use that Mohawk ability within neutral zone build-up sequences as well. So with Kaprizov, he can do it, and he's really good at doing it actually in the outside lanes. So when he's maneuvering in the outside lanes, he can maneuver using a 10 and 2 to evade a check and not lose speed off a defender and off a forechecker coming at him. And there's other circumstances where Kaprizov can use it to really leverage how he attacks and how he can get inside and how he can get into your ice as well. And with Kaprizov, we've mentioned how elite he is at scoring, how elite he is at playmaking. I mean, he's so good at generating shot assists and being able to be a playmaker, generate high danger passes, passing across the slot, passing with accuracy, passing with completion, and he's very nuanced at even strength as a passer as well. And then you look at the makeup of his defensive game, and you're even more impressed at what he's able to do because he's very consistent within his own zone as a defensive player as well. And sometimes wingers, especially in the NHL, they can tend to sometimes get a little bit lost when it comes to D zone play because there's not as much responsibility on wingers compared to centermen for good reason. Centers are able to control more of the ice and control more of the space, and they have to link together more of the structure. With wingers, you can get a little bit of cheating within the defensive zone in terms of habits, which sometimes it can help in terms of trying to generate an early exit or a cherry pick to try and generate a breakaway. But most of the time, it creates an odd guy out of the zone and it creates a 4v5, which is unnecessary. So there's some players who tend to do that, but with Kaprizov, you don't notice it really that much. You notice a lot of that defensive consistency stem into his offensive consistency as well. And so, especially as a winger, like I mentioned, where he can play left wing and right wing. He's a dual threat in that sense. He can play both sides, which is really good as well. Adds to his versatility in a slight way. You're looking at a player who's really good with positioning. He's really good with his feet. He's really good with his stick and how he's able to stay square to defenders, especially attacking at the point and trying to maneuver with them moving laterally. He's obviously got quick feet and the feet to be able to catch up to them. So by having the feet and the quick feet to go along with that and his stick positioning, it really helps him. So it gives him a lot of different leverages and those different scenarios as well. And with Kaprizov, he's really aware all the time too. I've noticed that his defensive zone awareness is actually really underrated in terms of shoulder checking, pre-scanning, ability to understand and anticipate patterns in the defensive zone, anticipate pucks going low to high or cross ice, whatever it may be. He's pre-scanning, shoulder checking. He's aware, shoulder checking over both shoulders as well, which is another big habit. And a lot of defensive zone habits are really ingrained within him to allow him to have success in the modern day game. And he's been so consistent, even when he started in the league in the NHL, his first year in his rookie year when he won the Calder Trophy. He was so consistent then, even as a defensive player, you can rely upon him in penalty kill situations as a first year player and as a rookie player. And he was their best player in year one. And the other thing is that's really intriguing is you can link him with multiple centers, right? So Ryan Hartman and Joel Eriksson Ek are the two centermen that you can really link together something special with when it comes to Kaprizov in his game. He's found more chemistry, especially in the last season with Hartman, and how well those two link off each other. Hartman's two-way play, his complementary play, where he's not necessarily a key offensive player per se, but he does a lot of things right in terms of competitiveness, checking, two-way play, physicality, and being aggressive at all areas of the ice as well. Now with Joel Eriksson, he's obviously very well-rounded and not, again, similar to Hartman in a sense where he's not necessarily uber offensive per se, but he does a lot of different details within his checking game, within his defensive zone patterning, within his ability to understand the details that go into all aspects of the game. He understands them really well. And so he's worked really well with those two centers, and he's been so consistent in his own game. And as a play driver, he's really evolved over time. He had a 100-point season, but he's been so consistent when it comes to play driving and being able to be a factor in every single situation for his team's offense, which is vastly underrated when it comes to his game and talking about his game because sometimes there are player drivers on certain teams that get a little bit of scoring off their line mates. But with Kaprizov, you notice sometimes he's still playing with quality line mates, but compared to, say, like a Kucherov in Tampa, or I think of other good examples. You could even say Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat both when they're in Chicago and Detroit and Colorado. I'm trying to think of a good example on Colorado. There's a couple on Colorado, but point being is that Kaprizov is able to really be a play driver in his own right. He's really able to understand these sequences in his own right. It's very important for him to be able to consistently drive play because he's obviously the best player and he needs to show up consistently now for that team and to be a consistent team over time as well.